Future Proof is sponsored by Learn Smart Academy, online revision courses for GCSE and A-Level. All your revision in one place, organised for you, interactive and game-changing.
Hello and welcome back from the break. Thank you for joining me, Sarah Hopwood, as I continue talking about the art of delegation. And in the first half, I was saying delegation can often come from two places. Do you have an innate desire to be an enabler, to empower people, to feel that as and when you leave the business that people will talk you up and say, do you know, this is the person who helped me most. I'll never forget when I used to be a teacher many years ago, and then I think it was in the last 4 or 5 years, I met a mum who remembered me, and their daughter was all grown up and actually went to Shoreham College. And the first thing the mum said to me was when the child was at school, in one of their classes in English, they were asked to write about the person who had inspired them most. And as it happened, this daughter had chosen to write about me. And what that just tells me is, and it's a question to ask everybody, can you imagine if somebody said to somebody in your office, can you write or tell me about somebody who inspired you the most? Can you imagine if that is your name that comes out the bag? So that's a great case, if you like, to be an enabler and to help other people climb that slippery pole often. And so that as and when you exit, then everything is left in a strong position. Or it can come out of crisis when delegation can be a solution to a massive, great big problem. And the danger there is that a process may not be in place. The delegation happens hurriedly. In fact, the delegation sits with abdication, which it shouldn't be. Delegation is not abdication. But in crisis, sometimes it turns into abdication because there's a problem. You chuck it over the fence. You go off to sort out the problem. And somebody's fumbling around trying to do what you've asked them to do, but perhaps if there isn't a proper process in place, they don't have all the tools that they need. You're away worrying anyway whether it's being done properly, and if there's a problem, then you say, see, I told you, I knew I shouldn't delegate because I'm the only one who can do it properly. And if we're not careful, we've actually caused that scenario because we haven't invested in the delegation process. And I was talking about, going into the break, the importance, if you manage people, then it's your responsibility to actually pass tasks down. That's not always the whole job. You can break the job up into tasks, but do as and when you can, pass those tasks down so that you are an enabler, that you are helping people. Also, it really helps you spot your rising stars, the people who are going to run this business as you try and exit for different reasons or earn money whilst you're asleep. All those things that business owners love the idea of. You can't get that if you don't enable, and that encompasses delegation. So rather than have what you put in versus what you get out, what you are looking for is an increase on your profits, on what you gain from running your business, which can then give you all the things that you need to then grow, expand, or whatever else you decide to do with your business. But of course, there's barriers. There's always barriers to any initiative. Some have called it a chair. As soon as you've got an idea to do anything, hey, let's delegate this, that, and the other, chairs appears, barriers, which are lack of time, your desire or a person's desire for perfection, and this psyche which often is misplaced and often tied up with other stuff, the desire for perfection. I'm the only person who can do it. Yes, it can be that on face value, but sometimes there is pride tied up with it as well. You've always done it well. People have praised you. If I hand this over to somebody else, what am I going to do with my time? Where am I going to get the praise or the recognition for all the good work that I do? Enjoying the task, you love it. Why should you delegate it? And in the first, I was saying, always make sure you delegate stuff that you like as well as stuff that you may not like so much. Lack of confidence in the employee. Training is very important here. If they don't know, they don't know. But that shouldn't, by definition, mean that they're then not qualified to do it. Find your rising stars. Find people who will embrace the learning. That's a really key thing I just want to say here. Before now, we've been known to say that we won't work with people who are told to turn up. And because what you're doing is you're looking for people who are buying into that training, who are doing it for themselves. And, I've seen it sometimes. I've travelled internationally sometimes, and I remembered running something for a women's conference, and half the people were distracted. They were on their phones, they were on their laptops, and it's because they were told to turn up. They didn't have an investment themselves. So find people who have a personal buy-in to the training that you want to give them. And also another good reason to delegate is work out the consequences if you don't. What will you lose if you don't? So what are the principles associated with delegation? Responsibility. Who is responsible for what? And this is tied up with breaking the delegation process into tasks. Focus on the process. If you focus on that, that will give you confidence, and also it gives the person that you're delegating to something to follow. They've got a roadmap to follow. Failure, permission to fail is very, very important. And I can hear all the lawyers, legal people screaming at me saying that doesn't work in our world. But, you can, in some delegation areas, find permission to fail. So people aren't frightened to, number one, come and report something going wrong, but also maybe they're not frightened to be slightly creative, because in that creative space of bringing you the results that you want, but maybe doing it in their own way, could give you another process that perhaps frees up time, frees up staff, frees up resources, frees up travel and motion. When if you watched a previous program and I was talking about Toyota 7 Waste, a creative thinker coming up with something slightly new and different can really have an impact on you removing waste from your organisation. Make sure every task is manageable. Make sure you've got the SMART goals in there: specific, measured, agreed, relevant. I know they're different to perhaps some of the other acronym names that you know. Time-bound, evaluation and reward, the SMARTer goals. Make sure those tasks are manageable. So as they are achieved, as they're signed off, there is job satisfaction for the person that you've delegated to, which then spurs them on to go again, perhaps either in repetition or indeed, what is the next bite-sized piece of learning or delegation are you going to give me? Always support them. As I said before, delegation is not abdication, and the person you're delegating to needs to know that you're not suddenly going to disappear. Part of that too is agreeing when they can come and perhaps contact you, when they can ask a question or a query. If it's not you, permission to go to somebody else, especially around confidential issues. Who can they go to for support, which will empower them to perhaps double check something before they keep moving on that task. And also completed staff work. Stephen Covey, make sure that when the person presents the work to you, that they really are happy with it, that it's not full of errors that are already known to them and they're chucking it back over the fence to you. Make sure they are held accountable for what they're doing. So how do you create a good process? And I'm going to in the next program cover these 7 areas to really unpack them in detail, to look as to how a process can really help you. But what I want to say here is make sure you select an appropriate task for the skills the person has, their desires for growth within the business, and also the team that they are working in and around or will be reporting to, or the team who will be impacted by the delegation, or indeed the clients that they're going to be interacting with. And make sure that you have really qualified it, that you've tested it in your head, that this is a good match, that this is something that you're not quietly thinking, yes, I'm going to delegate because we've got an initiative here of more delegation, but I know it's not going to work. It won't work. Because if you are already having those instincts, then I would say as a leader, as somebody who's heading up this particular delegation process, you have a duty of care to the person that you're delegating to, that you aren't putting them, if you like, in a lion's den, knowing full well that they are going to fail, and anticipating that failure, and make sure that you're not quietly thinking, and then everybody will see that I was right. the investment process, the enabling process is to start off believing that it will work. And if you can see any barriers, and I've covered those just now, as to where there might be a bottleneck, there might be something that could trip them up, get in there and clear the decks before they start as best you can. So just imagine it's your child or your cousin or whatever else it is that you are delegating to. Work for them. Don't intuitively work against them and almost wishing them to fail. Make sure there's a schedule there which is tied up with those smarter goals. And key thing is keep a trail. I advised this in a business that was bringing in agile working. We followed all of this. There were some barriers. There were people deep within the business who I could see were, if innately wishing it to fail, were half sabotaging along the way. So the people who were driving the agile initiative, I said, keep a trail of everything, because as and when this blows up, you need to be able to say, this is what we did, this is why we did it, and these are the results that we had on the back of being positive.